Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of Beckoning Brilliance. I'm your host, Becca Buka, and my guest for this podcast is named Erin. Erin is a brand and web designer. She does branding strategy, and she also does creative consulting. So I sat down with her, and we talked about websites and everything that has to do with branding, and I just kind of felt like it was a public shaming session for me because after talking to her, I realized that there's so much more that goes into branding, building your website, and just really cultivating and creating something that's recognizable for everyone. So during the conversation, we somehow weaved our way into talking about relationships and dating. So there was a lot of note taking to be had in this episode. She's super entertaining, really funny. And if you want her to come back on and talk about relationships and expand upon her stories, she said she's more than happy to do that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, for sure. So kudos to you for trying, because I didn't even do that. Today.
I know. I was like, when you are getting on a podcast and the host is an esthetician and makeup artist, it's like, fuck, I can't just be the lazy girl I usually am. Or I can. You can. But I get drowned out in photos with this lovely pale ass skin tone.
Dude, same. I was like, bronzer, let's go. Because like with this lighting, I have to like look like a clown, otherwise I look dead. So I get it.
I'm learning.
But you look great. So hi, Erin. Welcome to my podcast.
Thanks. I'm stoked to be here. I'm really grateful we're doing it. We just clicked immediately, and I'm stoked.
Yeah, and thanks for little Manti for hooking us up. Shout out. So for people that don't know who you are, can you give me a little intro about yourself? You do branding and you do website development, correct?
Yes. So I have a business called RubyWorks Co. I'm a brand and web designer. I also do business strategy and some like creative consulting. I'm LA based and I've just been like a West Coast kid my whole life. Former athlete. I've been an executive assistant and the marketing manager for a startup. So I've had a really like wide range, and I finally found a way to channel all of my like tyrant executive assistant energy and like creative and functional marketing into one place, and it's super fun. I actually work with a ton of people in the beauty industry, as well as like fitness, and I'm doing an architect's website next week, so it ranges, but I love working with small businesses and helping them go from good to great.
I love that. So for people that don't understand the importance of branding, like why is having a good quality, like distinctive brand important?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing people miss is that your branding is the messaging that you don't have to do every day. A good brand saves you a ton of work, just like a website is like your 24/7 salesperson. I got like 3 applications to work with me while I was on family vacation and just running like this like wild month of July. I had people applying to work with me, and all I was doing was like posting vacation on my work account. So these things really work for you, and everything from like conveying your value to price point, like a good brand will align with your mission and values and your price point and your expertise. And a brand that's like a little bit too kitschy or Etsy will also make people expect you to be in that price point as well. So in today's economy, I don't want to be perceived as an Etsy brand, and I'm sure a lot of other people can't afford to be perceived as an Etsy brand.
Right.
And it's something that I know a lot of people get afraid to invest in or don't find it as important. And I think it just is one of the many things that we have to work on as small business owners. And when you have like good brand recognition, or like your brand is perceived in the way that you want to be perceived, you just attract more of your target audience and who you want to be working with.
Totally. As I was going through all your stuff, I was just like kicking myself, and my confidence was like getting smaller and smaller. I'm like, damn, like I don't have any of this stuff, like the colors, the logo. I mean, I have a logo, but like that's all I got. Like the fonts, like it just seems so strategic. Strategic is what I meant to say.
It is. And what's crazy is I was like introduced to the concept of strategic branding when I was like a program assistant at the startup that I ended up being brand manager and managing their 3 brands. But it's kind of a flywheel. And when I'm talking to clients on branding, I just did 3 branding packages in a week and a half for clients. And one was a photographer that does like really editorial stuff. So just like basically like if Crate and Barrel had a staff photographer, she's doing like real life, but like really simple, really elegant. Like 80% of her photos are black and white. And then basically a professional matchmaker who doesn't want to be boring, but also needs to look like elevated. And then a like really trendy staffing agency for influencers assistants. So I was all over the board. But what's interesting is when people are talking to me about their businesses, I'm like, oh, here, 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 here. And like on the discovery call, I already have an idea of what their brand is going to look like with like 80% clarity. So it's just a skill set. Just like when you're looking in somebody's eye shape and you know exactly how their eyeshadow and eyeliner is going to go, or like what colors, like once you learn the system, it is something that's just like not quite boom, 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 but it is like so clear to me because there's 7 or 8 categories that you have to learn the ins and outs of. And like, I completely get how for business owners, that's too much. Like, it is what it is. And brand kits can be added onto, they can be adjusted later. You can start with something small and narrow in from there, but it is really fun and it just feels like problem solving to me.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like problem solving, and that's definitely a problem that I have. So like I said, as I was looking through stuff, I was like, God, I really got to do all this. I should have you do all my stuff for me, honestly.
Would love
I know
that.
you like, yeah, I know you like working in the beauty industry too. So I do this. I'm assuming a lot of other people fall into this too, where I focus more on social media. Like I haven't even looked at my website in a long time. So that's not a good thing, right?
Well, it's hard. Like it's hard to do everything. My recommendation for people that are really, really putting the effort into social media is to make sure you're working on your website quarterly. Like if you're going to put it on the back burner and like focus on social media, make sure you have something that you could fall back on. It's kind of like when people just take supplements every day and don't worry about their diet. It's like if you're eating enough and you're eating like if you're like, okay, I have a salad every other day, like if you got to be doing something for both. You can't just, and I understand, I think the difference is if you're talking about long-term or short-term goals, because your website is definitely more of a long-term goal. Short-term social media, it is fast in general, like people's attention span goes quickly, all of that. You have to keep up on, trends and is your bio optimized and all the things. I will never do social media management, and I have so much respect for social media managers, but I like being able to design a good website and then revisit it every quarter. And that to me is an excellent like time and energy, like resources, like that to me is exactly where it should go. A really great way that you can do that in the beauty industry or for the podcast would be updating once a month, updating the links to the different episodes and doing a couple hours once a month. And then every quarter adding links to like media and articles. It doesn't have to be immediate, but you should have things up for the long term.
Got it. I don't even have anything about my podcast on my website, so I should.
Well, we'll figure that out.
Okay, perfect.
No problem.
So, done and done. So like, what are the key things that you think like every website should have?
Okay, so it has to have a contact form. You have to have some way that you can gather information for people there, whether it's some sort of lead generation. So a contact form, ideally, if you have like a newsletter or any sort of like offer that people can express interest without making a big commitment. If you can get people's emails from them, amazing. It should also have, this is a bit controversial, I hate Linktrees.
I was going to ask you about this actually.
Oh my God. Like the idea. Okay. So you've put in so much work into your social media, right? Tangent. Hello. We're here. First one.
No, we're here.
You put so much effort into your social media every week, right? And I'm sure you love it, but also sometimes it's really annoying and it's the thing you have to do. Great. So one of the things that makes websites rank higher is the amount of times they get clicked on, searched for, etc. There's a bunch of things that go into SEO. I don't recommend learning all of the things unless you're going to be an SEO expert because it's complicated, it changes. But 3 things that really matter for SEO are user experience. So being on the site long enough to read it and clicking around, things like that. It has to look good. It has to function well. So user experience, the amount of traffic that goes to it organically, and then the back end settings and stuff like that. And your web designer should be working on those things with you, as well as like copywriter, whoever is writing copy should be putting their keywords that you want to be found on in the website copy itself, the writing on the website. So if we know these things are important for SEO, and SEO is how you rank higher organically and basically get free leads from doing the right things, why the hell would you send people from the social media that you've worked on really hard to a third-party website before sending them to yours? And I know I'm like always really exaggerated about this, but it's so like every little thing matters. And the difference is what Linktree does. It's not even like profound what they do. They just put a bunch of buttons on a page for you. And so the fact that that could be done on your own website and we choose a third party to do it is just, they just came in and cornered the market on something that was like almost foolish and everybody fell for it. But you can do that on your own website super easily. And so I actually have a links page template because I'm, super passionate about this. I think in the next week, I'm going to customize it for Manta actually. And so she can have her own landing page. And I do it for almost all of my clients too. Just make sure they have a links page on their website. That's like for a hair salon, it's usually like, book an appointment, homepage, view services, like view stylists, whatever it is. And then like some testimonials and some pretty stuff in there, because if you already have people's attention, let's make it look good and let's add more value. So a links page to answer that question, some lead capture, whether that's contact form. And then it needs to have throughout the website, it just needs to have a really, really compelling story of why this service or person is who the audience wants to connect with. And usually that's done with visuals and copy, but like, I'm sure you've heard that your about page on a website should be more about your ideal client than it is about you. And it's like but I think mine is just basically describing all the ways in which I can take the burden off of my clients and like what makes me relatable. Cause also I follow a lot of copywriters and I do copy for clients as well. It's a newer service after taking classes into my newsletter, blowing up.
Yes. We'll talk about your newsletter. I can't wait to talk about that. What exactly is copy for people that don't know?
So copywriting is the like kind of strategic and artful form of what's written on websites, on emails, and on everything on like the business's behalf. So sometimes that's social media. Sometimes a lot of copywriters do like launch copy. So if you're launching a new like service or course, they'll do the sales pages. They'll write the sales pages for you. They'll write the email sequences, and then often also write like the PDF or whatever the item is. And so it's the art and science of writing compelling work that also the science part of it is making sure it ranks well with SEO, making sure that it helps convert and it not only fits with the brand identity, but also identifies with the reader and the clients. Okay. Copy is one of the sneakiest things for people because they're like, oh, I'm a good writer. And then she's a godsend. She's one of my favorite clients, but I just did a pretty large branding and salon project. And we were like a week before the project. And this woman was like, I thought I was a good writer, but I had made a website copy template for her that kind of like prompted things. And she was like, I don't want to do this. Like, can you please take this off my plate? Like she was like, the things that I would do to get this off my plate. Like, and it's really hard because you have to be able to kind of look down and out at strategy and making sure things fit and making sure that it really resonates with the people you're trying to talk to. And that is the difference between just like basic writing and copywriting.
I'm learning so much from you.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here. Great.
Just like, God, I'm like, what am I doing with my business here? So when it comes to like attracting your ideal client, I've always been the type of person where I'm like, if you have a check, I have a talent. So as far as my ideal client, like, I'm like, hey, if you're cool, like if you, want to look better, like I feel like my ideal clients, whenever I think about it, it always seems pretty broad. So are there ways to like narrow that down? Because I keep on hearing how important that is. Yeah.
And it's one of those, the ideal client thing is actually something that I kind of try to use that term carefully because it's definitely like a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
But I think the way that you just described it, first of all, no judgment, because one of my favorite phrases is if the check clears. And then one of my other ones is I've done worse for less. So no judgment, liking to get paid for the work you do. And I I used to feel shame in this, but I'm learning to be a lot more comfortable with it. Like the whole jack of all trades thing. Yeah, I'm really good at figuring things out, and I can do that for you. Like, so when it comes to attracting more of your ideal clients, I think it's with somebody that's already kind of within their career and has some cool reference points. I would think back to either some of your favorite repeat clients or maybe a client that just came out of thin air, and think about what their day looks like, what kind of looks they wanted, how they wanted their like service to feel. Because what you described, I was like, oh, you like low maintenance, like people that live kind of low profile. Like or your adaptability is a sell. So maybe you want people that are like traveling and will love to take advantage of the fact that you're adaptable and like can be available on demand or whatever it is. But typically I think about either like my favorite clients ever and what was so great about them. Like the woman that I just said with the panic right before we started the website and branding project, she just wanted to trust me. And then she wanted to hand things off. Yeah. And that was ideal for me because I was like, great, I can follow through. Like I already have your trust for branding and web design. I can have your trust for copy and I'm going to do a good job. And I didn't know when we started working together that she was going to be the like one of the prototypes for my ideal client, but she came in and really wanted to trust. She always followed through, and she was at this point in her business where they were already good and it was already profitable, and she wanted to take it to the next level. So that idea of wanting to take it to the next level is one of the core values that I have, that I look for in my clients. Not that I'm really turning people away either, but when, if the check clears, but I can kind of tell who's not going to be super amazing to work with by their follow through and the checklist. And to be fair, I'm sure you work with people on really stressful days, whether it be like big events and stuff like that. Websites are also really stressful for people because I might launch, 3, 4, sometimes more websites a month, but most people only do 0 to 2 websites in their entire life. So they're big deals. And I don't know if you were subscribed already, but when I was redoing my website, I accidentally deleted a page and cried. No, I had already cried like 4 times writing it. I felt like I was bleeding on the page, like writing about myself was so uncomfortable. So I get it. But I had finished like 2 pages that took me a day and a half each, which is, usually I'm doing like 3 or 4 pages a day for some of my services. And then I accidentally deleted the about page. And of course I Google how to undo deleting a page. And it's the only thing you can't undo on my design platform. And I was like, this would have been a really good time to cry. Like this would have been the moment. And I did it. And then I was talking to, and we can go back to this, I was talking to somebody that I'm seeing, and he didn't understand that like it wasn't that the project was hard, it was that the project was personal. Because he was like, well, do you have a to-do list? He was trying to he did really well, because when we trust men with our emotions, sometimes it's really risky. And I love to play with fire, I swear to God. So at first he was like trying to problem solve, because it sounded like the project was overwhelming. And I'm like, no, I've done really hard shit. Like I launched a fellowship for postgraduate students in another country. I did the whole onboarding, marketing, and recruitment and hiring process. Like I've done massive websites with less time. Like it's not that the project is hard, it's that it is so uncomfortable to be this personal and to put my work out there like that.
Right.
And then the brilliant advice was, why don't you pretend it's somebody else's? Yeah. And he has a performance background. So he told me a story about the storytelling event that he was at, and the person was really, really nervous to go tell this like wildly personal story in an arena full of people. And maybe not an arena, but let's make him sound good. And the other person was like, oh yeah, when I do that, I just pretend the story's not mine. It's somebody else's. Like I write it and then I separate from it. That was pivotal for me. It was learning to like just evaluate it and put less which is my whole life in general, put less value on myself and just evaluate it for like something I put out.
Right. Like zoom out and view yourself from the outside. I was going to ask you if that is hard, like doing your own website and like how you come across versus like doing it for another person. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it is a lot harder to do my own, especially because I'm a person that my entire life put a lot of value in what I can do for others, not myself. So to demonstrate that, like growing up, I played sports, and in volleyball, I was a setter. So like almost zero stats besides assists. And then, and I loved it. I mean, I'm competitive as hell. Like I just want to yell and play sports. Like it's great. And then because I also loved yelling, I played softball, and in softball, I caught and played third, and catching is mostly making the pitcher look good and being there. It's not, it's kind of a lot of invisible labor. And then just like, you know, a background, we've talked about it, a background of being codependent in relationships and really having to learn how to have boundaries, lose that sense of urgency of like, if this person isn't around, I'm not taking it as an invitation to try harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was a big lesson. And so it is way harder because I can look at other people's work a little bit more strategically. Before we hopped on this call, I was talking to my client for next week, and she's kind of scrambling to get the copy together. They had to pivot some things for the website, kind of business related. And I was like, okay, well, usually when I'm designing on the fly like this, I will either use filler text with the directive of like, this needs to go in this paragraph, and then lorem ipsum, all of that. Or I'll just adjust the design and if I hate it, I'll tell you to write something. Like it's a lot more strategic when it's somebody else's. My own website, which right now is only like 5 pages, I'm about to add things to it, probably took me a week and a half and several cries. And it was just the most personal work I've ever put out there. And to realize that it's going to be a constant work in progress is hilarious. Like, I'm the copywriter I took a course from. Her and I are scheduling a copy audit to go over my website. There's already some things that I want to change in the messaging. I need to start highlighting more of my portfolio on it, which will include like some case studies that walk you through the process of these like 3-part projects. Yeah, it's so much harder to work on my own projects than other people's because I'm emotionally connected to it, and I'm way harder on myself than I am on anyone else. So I can look at somebody and tell them where their branding is lacking and where of those things. But when I do that to myself, it's a value judgment, which is what we work on in therapy.
I get it. If it makes you feel any better, when I had to come up with my website, I was putting out an online class. I'm like, I need a website. And so I sat down for a weekend. I like holed myself up in my apartment, and I'm like, all right, you can do this. You can do this. And I got so frustrated. I threw my phone at the wall and I put a hole in my wall. So like, I get it.
Yeah. I revert to crying and judging myself before throwing things, but I got close to throwing things.
So when it comes to like building up your clientele, like how do people find you? Is it just word of mouth?
It's an insane amount of word of mouth and like my own networking. About 80% of my clients are like 1 degree of separation.
Sure.
I actually had somebody come to me and for a website and brand kit, and they were like, yeah, well, I asked my beauty industry. So she's an injector, and she's like, I asked another injector who they went to, and they said you. And then I asked my hairstylist who she went to, and she said you. So it just kind of works out that way. And then also other people like in the industry, like I've had a copywriter friend recommend me to design the site that she wrote. And that's ideal because then she knows the site's going to look good. And so her portfolio is going to be boosted. And yeah, it's kind of word of mouth, either from clients or from other people that I've like worked alongside or know.
This is kind of a weird question. So do you have a signature style? Because I think something that I find hard, I mean, granted, I'm just talking about social media, but in my industry, I feel like there's one esthetician that I can think of. She's really good with her marketing, and I feel like everyone just copies her. So every time I've networked and I've met estheticians and we follow each other, I'm like, all these pages look the same to me. So like, is there a signature style? Is there like a way that people can stand out if they're just trying to work on their brand?
I think so. In order to stand out and to have a signature style, so your brand should be rooted in your brand value. So, and not what's trendy. Like we know like the classic editorial styles are really trendy right now. And I'm just like, okay, but what does that look like in 3 years? So,
Yeah.
and then like boho was like really big. As a web
Mm-hmm.
designer, I'm like, if I branded myself as like a wedding photography, like I bet I could book a ton of clients and like be a brand and web designer for people in the wedding industry. But like, I'm tired of script fonts and beige. Like, I don't want to do that forever.
Yeah.
And when we're talking across different industries, I think it's having, if you want contrast from the market,
Mm-hmm.
you can find that. You just have to make sure that it makes sense so it can last the kind of test of time, whether that be a couple months or years. But I think staying away from the really trendy fonts and making sure that your brand is well-rounded enough that if you're kind of like one of those key tastemakers in the industry, if you notice a bunch of people kind of copying or borrowing from your work, that you're able to use, you know, your other colors and your other elements in your brand kit to switch things up. I know when it comes to branding, we often look and emulate, and I think that's really smart, but if you are not really clear on your like brand pillars, like what you post about, what you talk about, what your values are, and if
Mm-hmm.
you're not consistent with your brand kit, then you're just trying to catch people in a moment that they find you and not actually worry about their customer journey.
Okay.
Does that make
I feel
sense?
like
Because
this,
like,
yeah, this is like public shaming. I'm here for it. I feel like you're, I know it's not geared towards me, but I'm just like, oh my God, she's talking right. She's talking about me.
well, okay, like, you know, the fonts that are really trendy right now are like the big impact fonts or like the kind of
Mm-hmm.
like editorial fonts, and those are really great. And I think you can use those in the long term and be successful and have like a signature look. But if you're just like pulling those out and jumping on, or just like, I will public shame when people just use Canva templates and don't adjust them to be their brand. If you're
Yeah.
using 16 different fonts in 14 different posts, then I can't save you. Like, I can't, there's no strategy. It's just consistency. Like, pick some
Yeah.
things that represent you and stick to them, because there's so many different providers out there. What you want is for people to see a certain aesthetic and think of you and know that it's you based on
Mm-hmm.
your messaging, based on like if you logo or watermark it, based on like the style. I know like this is the background you do for your podcast, and like that promotes recognizability. Like,
I mean, it's my studio apartment. I really don't have I don't
what
have anywhere else to go.
do we have? Yeah. I live in LA. We don't have a ton of room here. Like my rent controlled apartment. So I think it's more worrying about the customer journey and
Mm-hmm.
building recognition and building consistency and trust versus trying to pop up and catch people at the right time.
Okay. Noted. I'm gonna have to have a meeting with myself later today and be
Yeah,
like, all
we
right,
all
we need to focus. Something that I did think was interesting as I was going through your posts, you were talking about colors, and you said it's better to go with colors that have like a psychological response versus like something that you're drawn to, and or like your favorite color, because like that's
yeah.
totally what I do. I'm like, I love pink, I love blue, but it's like that's not necessarily like the best choice for your brand.
Yeah, and I did that wrong myself. Like the first iterations of the RubyWorks brand are Etsy for one. They're Etsy as hell. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay.
And I was using like a coffee cup icon and burnt orange, because I like burnt orange and I look good as hell in burnt orange. I'm not gonna lie
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. I can see it.
Thank you. So it depends. Sometimes you should be able to weave your preferences. You shouldn't have a brand that you hate the look of, but sometimes you can weave your preferences into the branding. And you know, like a magenta is different than this like soft baby pink, and a brand could
Yeah.
have both of those and work really well. But Barbie pink gives off a different vibe than baby pink, and it bodes well for businesses to try to play into those and to make sure that the values and stuff make sense, because otherwise it just creates kind of like a confusing microsecond in the consumer brain, and we don't want to confuse consumers at all. Where orange, for example, is usually like a really energetic color and like innovation, and kind of like it's a kind of a springtime color. And if my messaging matched that, I could probably use orange, but that's not the way that I decided to go, even though it's a color that I like. versus I wanted something, because you and I have talked about trust already and like elevating brands from good to great. I talk a lot about how simple branding is still elite. So I chose more classic colors in like different tones. So I have like a really deep bottle green for like trust and sophistication. And then I have a softer green that I don't use as much that's a little bit more youthful, trying to bring in the idea of like kind of new and fresh. And then I have some purples, which are also like kind of higher end colors, and they're soft and feminine, but they're still like, I don't know, pretty adaptable. So, and then I use like a beige and a white. Like I just kind of kept it pretty simple. And your brand should be something that you like looking at and you like playing in. But like if you really like a color, like get curtains that color. Like it doesn't have to be your business.
Noted.
Or have it be an accent color that you use every once in a while. Like, I don't know, I'm having friends over for dinner on Sunday and I made a Canva invite for it. Like, I use all my personalities. I use a full range in my life. I just don't use everything in my business.
Facts. I
threw a whole party called Padres and Palomas, a parents' reveal party when my parents came to town, and had a big royal blue and orange like invite. Super fun.
I love that.
Yeah, great phase. Like great, moment in time where I liked royal blue.
I love royal blue. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. All right. Like I said, I'm feeling so inspired by this conversation. Okay. So let's talk about your newsletter. So when I reached out to you, you sent me an email with a link to your website, obviously. And you also sent me some examples of your writing. You're such a good writer.
Thank you.
Yeah. So can you talk about the newsletter, how that happened, and just, start there. And I have so many questions for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So the newsletter started kind of begrudgingly. When you asked what every website needs and I said a lead capture, mine didn't have that yet. And I really wanted to, I knew I had to do the thing that made the most business sense, which is either a blog or a newsletter. And those help a blog helps build your long-term SEO, and a newsletter gets people that, could be leads. I also am a person, like I've moved states after every breakup. Like I have a hard time staying in touch with people as much as I should. So instead of having I knew I wouldn't write it consistently. I'm on week 17 of the newsletter.
Nice.
And, I got like 50 subscribers in the first 3 weeks, which was fantastic.
Amazing.
I knew I would half-ass it, or I wouldn't be interested if I was just, like writing marketing tips or things like that, when like I don't have that many new ideas. Like I hate your Linktree, your branding should be strategic, and you need a website. So like I don't know how many times I can write that before people would unsubscribe. So my newsletter marries, and the third thing that the newsletters really helped me learn is that my like family culture, like I grew up with, I have an older sister who's amazing, and then my parents who've been together 35 years, and they are hilarious. I always say my mom is where I get my audacity from, and my dad is where I get my sense of humor. And so growing up just with these like fantastic range of personalities, we tell stories to connect. And when we get together, we're interrupting each other to tell stories that don't connect at all. Everybody in my family are teachers. So it'll be like a story about my niece who's a toddler, a story about football camp 3 years ago, and then a story about, somebody's in Mexico right now. Like just, they don't connect at all. It's like, yes, I heard you. Now here's a story I want to tell you. And so learning that storytelling was something that like kind of just comes innately and is like a way to connect was really great. So my newsletter is not the classic, like, here's how to make your website better, or here's a sale that I'm running. It's oddly personal, and it kind of just tells a story. Sometimes there's like tips and tricks at the end. I wrote a story about, one of my first newsletters was like, I'm not a nail tech, and 3 other things I've learned in my first 6 months of business. Yeah. And because, I think I can learn everything. So I have done many sets of acrylic nails and Gel X nails, but they don't last nearly as long as when I go to a salon and have a real nail tech do it. Yeah. So it depends how much time I want to spend. But for that one, it was like, okay, I'm not a nail tech and 3 other things that I've learned. And then in the 3 other things that I've learned, it's like, here are some things that you could apply to your business or brand if you wanted to. But most of the time it's like, some guy I dated that, you know, was mad that he couldn't get a bulk discount at the tailor, and like, or the story of when one of my like best friends came to visit me when I was living abroad, and he didn't wear pants to a nightclub, so he had to buy a pair of pants out from a bouncer's trunk. Like the bouncer was like, he can't come in with those. And we had already pre-gamed, and we're 22. Like we had already pre-gamed, and the girls that spoke, the other girls, the native Spanish speaker already was inside the club. So I'm just like drunk outside trying to haggle with the bouncers to get my friend inside. And he ended up telling us to meet him at his Honda Civic in 5 minutes with $40. And so my friend bought a pair of pants and then went inside. Like it's a good deal for the bouncer at least. So like that story gets told and I get a lot of responses. I'm really grateful. And I think it serves 2 purposes. One, I get to keep in contact with people that maybe I wouldn't be talking to every Wednesday. I wouldn't be showing up with a notification from me every Wednesday without the newsletter. But for those people that are personally in my life that I'm not really selling to, they at least know what I'm working on and know what I'm doing, because everybody needs a website. Almost everybody's website's out of date. So if they're like, hey, my friend Erin, you know, my old neighbor, my old teammate, whoever does websites, you should work with her. I'm at least staying top of mind with these people that I know personally. And then for people that are more like leads that have found me, or like found my work or been referred to me, etc., they're learning how to connect with me. And I think with service providers, and I'm curious if you think that the beauty industry falls into this too, there are so many web designers. It's really not about, you know, being the best one. It's obviously I want to do great, but there's so many web designers that you could work with and be satisfied with. Ideally, there's a lot that you wouldn't, but we'd hope that like, you know, there's a full market. So my thing is like, if people really connect and resonate with me and they want to work with me and they see what I'm doing, then it bodes well for business as well. And it helps you understand who I am. And I'm nosy when I'm talking to clients. I'm like, okay, in my branding questionnaire, it's like, if your brand were to have a receptionist, how do they answer the phone? Like if your brand were a drink, what kind of drink would they be? And it's just like, okay, like I want to know the details so that I can build something that really represents you and your brand and is attractive to not most of the time too. My clients are sort of hiring and looking to get more clients. So we're looking at kind of two-way traffic. Yeah. And it's just one of those things of like, I want to know your personal details. So I kind of feel like I have to put mine out there to an extent as well.
Yeah. That's interesting. I feel like everything you do is so why can't I say so strategic? It's a tongue twister. Yeah, we were talking about this before we got on the call, but sorry, to back up and answer your question. Yes, I totally agree. Even when I was in cosmetology school, they told us that. They were like, you could be the best hairstylist in the world, but if you have this, like, if you don't have a personality that connects with people, you're not going to be as busy as the C- hairstylist that has a killer personality and makes everyone laugh and feel good about themselves. So yes, that's always been a big, point of discussion for sure. So that was something that we were talking about before we started recording. Was I admire the fact that you put yourself out there and like your personality, because that's something that I struggle with, is not knowing whether to fully be myself, I'm in my head a lot of the time. So I'm like, does this come across unprofessional, even though I want to showcase my personality? So it's just a constant battle inside. So was that a struggle for you at all?
Yeah. And I wasn't doing it effectively. Like I quote unquote like started Ruby Works in November of last year, and the newsletter started in April. So I didn't like find this right away and like know everything. It took a while. And it also, I thought I really had to market myself as super effective and super efficient and something you can trust. And I am those things, but just like you were saying about hairstylists and people in the beauty industry, how people feel when they work with you is almost the most important thing to the results. Like we do this all the time. Like I absolutely love my hair colorist. Like he is a friend. He's been over for dinner. Like, you know what I mean? I know him through mutual friends. And if we didn't have that personal connection, then when my appointment runs long or when people are getting fit in, like while I'm processing, somebody gets a haircut really quick, I might view that differently. But because we have this personal connection, I'm like, look how much money Ryan gets to make today. Or like, oh, look how booked and busy he is. I'm so happy for him. And I still leave just as satisfied. We give people a lot more favor and grace when we have that connection with them, as well as it's just one of those things of like, there's a book Pat Flynn writes called Superfans, and this kind of idea that the most compelling marketing is actually the marketing other people do on your behalf. We see that with social proof and like testimonials, but if like the reason I'm on the podcast is because Victoria Manta came to you and was like, oh my gosh, you have to have her on. That's way more compelling than me hitting you up out of the blue and being like, hey, I have great stories, like here's 3 links. Like that's not the same. And we got to the same place, but the personal attachment is really, really important. And it's one of the biggest game changers. So that's why I do the newsletter. It's why all of that. But it was awkward and clunky at first because I'm someone that like, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't realize that the online business space and the entrepreneur space is different than like corporate America. Because when I was an executive assistant, I supported a VP at a university, and I had a clothes formula. Monday, Thursday, blouse. Tuesday, Friday, sweater. Wednesday, button up. Because on Wednesdays, I met with my executives. So like, you know, like that's not who I am actually with like my own free will and how I would dress, but it's what I was doing for the job. And now there's different things that I do for the job. Like posting my face on social media isn't something that I would do if I just had a normal 9-to-5. That's not something that I'm like passionate about. It's something that I do to grow the business and to showcase my work and to build community for more success and to do my job more. And getting over that was really nerve-wracking, learning how to just put my face on camera, learning how to talk, learning to start getting more comfortable as a work in progress, or especially with an athletic background and somebody that is one of my biggest values and what I look for in people, regardless of how they are in my life, is their follow through. Like you have to be impeccable with your word to be in my life. Yeah. I've done consistency. I've dated a lot of sometimey partners, and I'm telling you, it's not for me anymore. And it just creates headaches when people don't follow through with work. So like across the board, I really value consistency. And so learning how to talk about projects when they're in the planning and drafting phases, because people need to warm up to the ideas and gain familiarity instead of just popping up and being like, hey, this is a new service that I offer. Buy now. That doesn't work. But if and there's so many benefits from it. So one of my best friends that I live with is an artist, and we have a whole wall of shoes that I'm sure you've seen in the back of my stories. In my room, I have a big piece of hers. I have a tattoo that's hers. Like we have a massive piece over our dining room table that's her. And somebody one day was like, why do you never talk about the shoes? And I was like, okay. And I did like a walking tour of my house on my story and like linked her website, showed the tattoo, like talked about it a little bit. And so when we're willing to put certain categories of our lives out, it actually creates a lot of opportunities for connection, because I might not know somebody right now that needs a website, and they might just be following me because I'm interesting or because a friend recommended me, but maybe they need a new piece of art and they can pay my best friend money.
Totally. I love that connection.
I also want to be really transparent that I don't put everything. I'm not like an everything influencer. Like I'm a person that on my personal page, I have had partners on it before, like very sparingly. Actually, this is a funny flex. I didn't post an ex that I was with for 4 years until almost a year. And I just like posted a picture on my story of him in Paris with me. Like it was just like, got a boyfriend. Here's him in the Eiffel Tower. Like I'll soft launch somebody at some point, but like if you're in my life and we're friends, like, you know who I'm dating, you know about them if you haven't met them, but in the like quote unquote public eye, I don't want any of that. So acknowledging when I was crying over my website and like he was talking me through, like pretend it's somebody else's, or you know, there's another Sagittarius that I'm also dating. And his advice was, what if you're overthinking it? Like, what if you, and Bold Advice from Brave Men was the title of that one. And it's just like, I don't share everything. So you might know in that newsletter that I hinted at dating them. I didn't say it outright, that I'm dating or that I have a partner, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to see on my stories, like, anything like that. If I'm not home for a day, you'll see me in the car, like, just things like that. You don't know my hormones. Like, you don't know if I'm like cycle syncing. Like, I'm not getting into like every single thing, but there are definitely certain things that I'll talk about in the newsletters where I'm most vulnerable. And I feel like those people are with me every week and they've earned that. Whereas like my story and social media where anybody can pop in and see it without even following me, I'm a little bit more strategic in what I share.
Yeah. I mean, I have 2 separate accounts for that reason, because I was like, I don't know if I want potential clients to like, see me out with my friends. And so, I always feel like I have to separate the 2 for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the meme accounts that I follow, like, let's keep those.
Oh, yeah. We don't need my clients seeing the memes I post. No, definitely not.
One of the things that is really important to me is in dating and relationships is learning how to remove the sense of urgency that got me kind of stuck in patterns I didn't like. So there's a few things. I've been in long-term relationships and I was always struggling with one aspect of it. Like in a relationship I had when I was way younger, we were like kind of more, we weren't a romantic match and we worked like hell to stay together. He's an amazing person. We still have like mutual best friends and I am so grateful that that's who I dated all of college. But our identities were super intertwined. I like worked his sport games and we worked together, our work study jobs. Like my identity was I took pride in being his girlfriend and I don't see anything wrong with that. But I think that I wasn't proud and like really examining the way that was affecting me. So it was just like, that was where my codependency, like really, I noticed it. I'm sure there was other parts of me, but I think I already said this, but not taking misalignments or rejection as an opportunity to try harder is something that I've learned that like, oh, it's not that I need to change. It's that like, maybe we're just not aligned here. Like and that showed up more recently when I first moved to LA. I was seeing someone for like 3 months. And on our first date, maybe it was like a FaceTime before our first date, but I told him, I was like, I don't know if I'm traditional enough for you. Like the man didn't want split bank accounts. Like he was a lawyer with a golden retriever, great face, like former athlete, like so many things in the pro column.
Yeah.
And he was sitting there and he had said people that split bank accounts don't take marriage seriously enough. Oh. I was like, so you making all your money? And like, of course I'm going to be rich, like, whatever. But like, right at that moment in time, he's making at least 3 times what I make.
Right.
And he's saying we split everything?
Oh, no.
I'm like, this feels detached. My reality and your reality are different. But like, he gets to feel that way. And I really hope he finds somebody that, wants a shared bank account with him. I think that's great. And loves how much he golfs. Great. No problem. But that was one of the first times where I actually separated myself from how do I fit into your life into like, I don't know if this is going to pan out the way that would work. I don't know if I'm willing to give what you want.
Right.
And then that was a really big lesson of learning not to like make myself fit, because being accepted was like the number one goal, but being accepted for who they wanted me to be versus who I am. And so that was a really big struggle. And I spent a long time, like that was a year and a half ago. So I lived 28 and a half years doing the other stuff of like, let me fit in. I bet I could try harder. I bet if I just, my favorite, I was texting back and forth with a friend today about codependency, and we were mocking each other with like what your slogan for codependency would be. And I said that if you want your partner to like you more, don't ask them what they want. Do a bunch of things you've decided they want and then make sure they're grateful. So there's this thing,
Lovely.
like, I think a lot of, like, the love we're socialized to believe is a lot more like manipulation and control than just like two people being like, God, you're awesome. Let's make this work.
Right.
So when I started to prioritize myself more in relationships, things really started to change. And I also kind of just like tried to remove that sense of urgency. Let me find the dating rules. So years and years ago, I was like 24. It was October and November, and I called it Hovember. And I dated a bunch. I had a lot of dates, like so many dates that I had a panic attack at work one time, and my coworker was like, you got to break up with at least 2 of these people. Like, you cannot keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so I was on a therapy call this last November. So I was planning on leaving this is an amazing story. I was planning on leaving the job that I was at when I moved down to LA. And then 3 weeks before I planned to put in my 2 weeks notice, because I was waiting to get the bonus before I put in my notice, I got laid off with severance. Amazing. Like, the universe, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I was like, perfect. I haven't had a Hovember in a while. I got a few weeks to like start working on RubyWorks and do the things. Like, I already had some client work lined up. I was like, okay, let me do these projects. Let me be a little feral. Then we'll move on with life.
Yeah.
These were the Hovember rules. And I was on a call with my therapist, and I was like, okay, so it's going to be Hovember soon. And these are and she goes, I haven't heard that in a while. She was like, she remembered.
Oh, from your old Hovember?
Yes. Okay. Not me like double chin laughing. Okay. Hovember rules. This is the clip, I guess. Hovember 2.0 rules. Phone numbers don't get saved in your phone until after the 3rd date. Men, because I date men and women, and I feel way safer with women. Men don't enter my apartment until after the 3rd dates. Weeknight curfew is 11 p.m. And that's when I'm not working, by the way. Like, that's not, like, if I have a 9 to 5, I was like, no.
Yeah.
So my personal limit for my schedule is 2 dates a week plus maybe a lunch or coffee. So, like, I'm cutting it off. If you don't fit into this week, I'm so sorry. And that was the start of boundaries for me. If you spend the night at my apartment, in the morning, you have to go get me and my roommate coffee.
I love it.
Like, pay your dues.
Yeah.
And then dates have to be like an outside of the house activities. I'm not like coming over for dinner. You're not doing that until I'm ready to cry in front of you. If I'm not comfortable enough to cry in front of you, then we have to go do something. It's not like, I really don't like the casual dating of like, oh, why don't you just come over? If we are going to be together in any sort of long term, there's going to be tons of hanging out on the couch. Let's do something while it's still new, because you never get that back.
That's so true. That's such a good point. And
then at the bottom of this is my curb template when I am stressed out about telling somebody I don't want to see them anymore and I want to say it respectfully. So the curb template is, this was really fun and I had a good time with you. It doesn't seem like the romantic connection I'm looking for, but I'm definitely open to spending more time together. I think you're a lot of fun. And I think I stopped adding that last part because I don't need friends. Like, I don't need friends. Like, what now we split the bill? No. There's no point.
I love that you have a rejection copyright just in your phone.
Well, because I get stressed out as like a pick me girl for so long, I get stressed out about telling somebody no, because there's this part of me that just really, really wants to be liked. I also learned that sometimes I'm more focused on, I instituted a soft rule of 90-minute first dates. And obviously you can leave before 90 minutes, but just to like cut it off after dinner. And I'll tell people like, hey, I do 90-minute first dates. And if they don't respect that boundary, it's already kind of a red flag. But I did 90-minute first dates because I realized that like sometimes I'm more concerned with winning the date than if I actually like the person.
Okay. What's your definition of winning the date?
Being somebody that they want to see again, like making them like me.
Yeah.
I was on, so I was doing, there's a period of time that may or may not be completed where I was doing a partner's nails. Like I would paint his nails, like with nail art. It would be like, you know, one of the activities that we do, instead of like watching a show, it's like, okay, we're going to sit down
Right.
and do your nails.
Right.
And I was on a walk getting ice cream with a friend, and I was telling her that like, I just have this voice in my head that like, this person doesn't like me as much as I like them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm nervous that they're not like, you know, they're not as interested in me, or like that the, you know, the connection is fragile in some way. And she goes, that man is walking around with flowers on his nails. You're worried he doesn't like you?
Yeah, you got that.
And I was like, huh. Like, all you got to do is have a friend with self-esteem to dumb things down for you. You know,
Yeah.
like, so grateful. But I even told him that. I was like, yeah, I was at ice cream with my friend that talks sense into me, and I was really nervous about this. And he goes, yeah, I have sisters and coworkers. Like, everybody asks me about my nails. Don't, like, they're a commitment. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
you like me, great.
That's adorable. Going back to the rules, what are your rules around like drinking on the first date?
I don't mind it. I'm not a big so I don't get drunk very often unless I'm like in the house. Like, I'm not a big like drinker. Like, if we're like hanging out, or like maybe it's somebody's birthday party, but I don't really drink in excess a lot. I just I know that there's a lot of addiction in my family, and that was like made clear to me at a very young age. So I usually have kind of a handle on that. I'll definitely have 2 drinks on a date. I'm also a lightweight, even for somebody that's like my size. Like, I'm a bigger body, and so being tipsy off of like 2 glasses of wine, I just got to be like aware of it.
Right.
But I will definitely have drinks, but if it's like I'm squeezing it in, or we go to a brewery, like, I'm only going to have drinks that I like. I'm not going to like drink to like make the other person feel better about it. I'll drink a sparkling water for at a brewery because I don't really drink beer.
Yeah. That I think like for me that falls into like my codependency and like pick me, like, yeah, I'll have a drink with you. Oh, you want to take a shot? Sure, sounds good. And it's like I don't actually want to be getting drunk while I'm trying to figure out if I like you, you know? Because then obviously I'm like I'm a Libra, so I'm like, I love you. Oh my God, your favorite color is blue, mine too. I love you.
I think one of the biggest things for me was learning that so the biggest game changer for me in dating was only dating people that made me feel safe. And I went on a little chaos spiral where I was dating people that were like, and it like, chaos is fun. Like, but not feeling safe wears off. And I don't really want to be in that like kind of relationship spiral of like either convincing this person to like me, telling them that, you know, respect is something that I want in a relationship. Like, if I have to say that, it's too late. Like, there was a lot of that in previous connections. So I think when I just like set it up as like, I need to be home by 11, like, yeah, like if you need to push dinner back, no problem. But like, my thing is I need to be home by 11 on weeknights. Like, or I can have 2 drinks, but after that I start feeling gross the next day. And if a person is pushing after that, they're just not a person that I need to be around. And so I also like the whole like impeccable with their follow through. I want somebody with their own boundaries. Like, this is not the most progressive thing I've ever said, but like, if I'm dating a man, I want him to have a backbone. Like, I want you to be able to say no to everybody if you need to, except for almost me sometimes. You know, like
100%. 100%.
And it's just kind of like a trust thing. Like, I like to know, I always say that like rules are a container for me to feel safe in. And it's not like, and my rules are my responsibility, but if somebody is trying to push me past them, like, I wouldn't want to say like, oh, like maybe we're out at dinner and I ate a lot and I've been drinking a lot of water and the wine is really good and I want a 3rd glass of wine. I wouldn't want to be dating somebody, any gender, that's like, you can say like, oh, a 3rd? And I'm like, yeah, but it's not your job to puppy guard my rules.
Yeah.
But you should just be respectful of them, and you shouldn't be the one crossing them. And I think in the past, something that I've done that didn't serve me was setting rules that I didn't follow.
Yeah.
You know, when women are like, oh, I would never do that in a relationship. And then they get in a relationship and do all the things that they said they weren't going to do.
Relatable. Yep.
Yeah. Hello. It was me circa 2015 and beyond. And it's just one of those things of like, if you're not respecting your own boundaries, what is the other person around you learning? That your boundaries don't matter.
Yeah. You teach people how to treat
you. Teach people. There's a lot of privilege in this. So I have to like be careful how like broadly I say this, but I think that two things. One, we are the common denominator in our relationships.
Yes, of course.
Obviously, like, abuse and all of those things aside, when it's just like two mostly healthy people, I think we are the common denominator in our relationships, because what we're attracting, what we're allowing, and then the other thing that kind of hitches on to that point is that we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
There was a week, so with November rules, that didn't really pan out. I started fresh in January, and I had said the thing of like, I don't. One of the people that I'm dating lives like 2 miles away, and like, even recently, I just like took laundry over, and we were working at his place because he has a second desk, and then we like either go on a walk or like go out to dinner. It's like easy because we've been seeing each other for a long time. But at the very beginning, I was like, oh, I can really only do like 1 date a week with you. But if you want to plan it, we can do like dinner and a walk. We can do whatever. But it's not going to be your apartment for a while. It's not just going to be my apartment. Like, we have to do things. And then like months into dating, like, past my Q1 check-in where I do the 90-day review.
Yeah.
I was having a rough week, and I was like, hey, I know you're like working a lot this week, but is there a night that I can just like come over and hang out? Like, I just need a proximity date. Like, I don't really need a lot of attention. I'm just like feeling in my head, and I'd like out of the house, and I'd like to be like the comfort of being around you.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's an option? Because I had said the rules and he had followed the rules.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, we're evolving here. Like,
I was going to say, you have really good, clear communication. I started following this Instagram page where it talks about like masculine and feminine polarity, and how when women communicate what they want clearly, it actually gives men an opportunity to like step up and be more masculine. So I'm just like really impressed with your communication.
Thank you. Years and years of therapy. Also, like, I think the masculine and feminine part is really interesting because I'm a person that is attracted to range. Like, I like people that have a broad range, whether it's, platonic or more romantic relationships. Like, I think range is really impressive. And I think part of that was a defense mechanism that when I was making myself smaller, I sought out other people that had the thing that I wanted to be able to demonstrate.
Of course.
But I'm a person that really values partners that have that sort of range as well. So like, I have to demonstrate it. But like, you see this as like, I think the debate around dating and masculine and feminine energy, or like, everything being paid for and stuff, is like, I think it's gotten a little bit off track. I think what we should be really focusing on is like respect, reciprocity, and what feels good. Because like, if somebody wanted to pay my rent, but I'm not mad at that. But also, if I'm taking something without some sort of reciprocity, like maybe to that person, my rent is not something that really affects their bank account. Like, but I also think that there should be something that affects their either time, freedom, something that I'm offering back. And, I'm a former executive assistant. I worked at a travel company. I've food prepped and basically a chef. Like, there's a lot of things I could do. When I broke up with my last 4-year partner, his initial response was essentially, this is going to be really inconvenient. Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, I'm your bank. I'm your executive assistant. I'm your travel agent. Like, I'm your chef. I'm your housekeeper. I'm your also social planner. Like, this is going to be really inconvenient for you. You should have figured it out.
Oh my God. What a dick.
So with the masculine and feminine energy, I like when both are allowed and accepted in partnership, because, like, for example, like, if I'm dating a man, I want him to be, quote unquote, in his feminine enough to be cleanly. Like, I don't want like a he-man that's like doesn't have a clean apartment. Like, I want you to be, and also it's really important to me. This is a tangent, number 17. One of the best pieces of advice I got from somebody that I used to know at my last job was that when he was like 38 and decided he wanted to settle down, which is amazing, he made a list of the 10 things he did want in an ideal partner and the 10 things he didn't. And he held himself accountable to that when he would be seeing someone and realize that they were not the things he wanted. And the list wasn't like big boobs, like, it wasn't that. The list was like, has a creative and a physical hobby, has
Yeah.
a robust friend group that she's actively involved in, like values family, like those sorts of things. And so I was about to travel home for a long weekend or a wedding or something. And so I sat on the plane and put my phone on airplane mode and made a list. And I went back and saw him when I got back from that trip. And I was like, my list is not 10 and 10. He goes, oh God, what is it? I was like, it's 22 and 18. Like, there's so many things. He was like, let me see it. So we went through it. He was like, I think we can take dangly earrings off. And I was like, no, we can't. I've fallen for that. Like,
what's wrong with dangly earrings?
I cannot. I'm not a strong enough woman to date a man that that wears dangly earrings. I've tried. It's not for me. Like, you guys can have them. There's somebody out there for you. There's somebody out there for me.
Oh
Mine doesn't have dangly earrings.
I'm a sucker for it too, so I get it. But
I've just made that mistake once or twice, and now I'm done.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
But this idea of like clarity on, and the people that don't make the list are not bad people. They're just not for me. Or they're not what I want to be with long term. So this list helped like develop some clarity, and on that list, just like impeccable with our follow through. Like, you have to have sweatpants that are baggy on me, and I got big legs, so that's kind of a lot to ask, but I'm okay with it. Like, I don't know, buy bigger sweatpants. And like, there's some personal things like based on personality, and then there's also like some silly things that I'm also just like not willing to look past.
Yeah.
But it would be silly for me to go back to the lawyer with the golden retriever and try to make myself fit in his life when I know that one of my remaining goals is to live abroad again in a Spanish-speaking country. Like, I don't know how the bar works, but I don't think lawyers can just move to another country and start practicing law. Like, I don't think that's how it works. So what happens is, like, I've a long-winded way of saying all of this is, like, my relationships and my work got a lot better when I stopped abandoning self, when I stopped making myself small, or when I stopped just, like, trying to be the person that I thought other people wanted me to be, and just got more comfortable showing up in ways that were authentic and made sense. So in dating, that's like, hey, I'm an over communicator. Like, but you're always going to know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to be hiding shit from you. I also, one of my favorite tricks is that when I'm upset with a partner, I talk to them like an HR lady. Or if I'm breaking up with you, I'll talk to you like an HR lady. Like, you're not going to make me angry. You're not going to have that power over me. So, and it's just like a respect thing. Like, I can tell you, like, I love to start a sentence with perhaps. Like, perhaps it's a misunderstanding, but what I'm getting from this is, or like the way this is making me feel is, and I try to take accountability, but offering it like really flat of like, do you want to talk about it? Or am I correct in this assumption? Like, what's it like for you? And that's been a game changer, because once I realized that like how people treat you is really more about them than it is about you. And 100%. These people are brand new. Like, when you're dating somebody, these people are brand new, and we put a lot of pressure on them to understand us and know us and fit in our life. And it's like, I had a situation where somebody I was on a third date with made me really uncomfortable. And I like, when your like body freezes up, I had that. I'm a big freeze or fawn. Those are my preferred. Me too. And like, I like was like a fainting goat. Like, we were like cuddling on the couch and it happened. And I like had like a fainting goat moment. And I just really calmly said, I was like, was my boundary unclear? He said, no. And I was like, okay, then I need to go home.
Oh my God.
Like, we're not then. And then like, it was a really telling thing where he continued to like try to console me. And I guess that was his attempt to try to console me. But everything he was saying was about him. Right. Like, I'm a really good guy, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, you made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it was still about him. And so I finally said, the biggest red flag here is not what happened. It's that when I told you that I was upset and uncomfortable, you were continuing to talk about you and not saying, oh shit. For any men listening to this podcast, if anybody, it doesn't even have to be men.
Yeah.
If somebody says what you're doing made me uncomfortable, all you have to do is say, shit, I didn't mean to.
Right.
Is there anything I can do?
Yeah. Take accountability.
Yeah. Like, get to accountability, but like, just stop. And you're like, wow, I didn't mean to do that. What do you need?
Yeah.
Like, that situation would have gone very different
Right.
if it was like, oh God, but I asked you, was my boundary clear after you tried to cross it? You said yes. I just got to get my person go. Like, that's all. There's no need for further conversation.
Right.
And then you making it about you just shows me that, like, my needs or safety or feelings are not being considered in the first place. And that's fine because we barely know each other, but I don't need to be here.
Yeah. God, good for you.
Thanks. Wow, these are tangents, ma'am.
I'm like, oh, it's already been an hour and 11 minutes.
I
Like,
know.
No, but I'm here for it though. Like you obviously have like a lot of experience in like introspection, and you're very self-aware. So I'm like fucking taking notes over here too. So I mean, I'm gonna be, I don't know if you know how old I am, but I'm gonna be 39 next month. So like all of the stuff that you're talking about, I'm like just learning this stuff. So you're like very ahead of the game.
You have incredible skin. I would have never known.
I mean, thanks. That's what I do for a living. So
I know.
Yeah.
I've had a little sculpture. That's it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love sculpture.
I haven't done anything to my face, so just the Lord. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Congrats.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's like all I got going for me is my face. But yeah, no, that's on my tangent here. No, like seriously, I'm like very impressed with the fact that you have learned how to like set your boundaries, and like you just sound like you know exactly what you want. And obviously, if you are just like wandering through life with no goal, like you're gonna flounder. So having a clear vision, having that focus, and knowing exactly what you want, you can't help but to manifest exactly that.
Thank you. I think it also like should be made, I should say be made clear that like there was a period of time where dating was one of my top priorities. Like I did probably 4 years of like pretty intense dating, to the point where like it was the part that I really wanted to like learn and grow. And it's also fun. Like I don't know, like I was 26. Like that's a good time. I had a job that was like steady enough. Like I had kind of like enough in all these other categories. So the way that like when people dive into being vegan or CrossFit, that was me in dating. Like I was dating. Yeah. So I had a lot of data points. I've done my market research. And now it feels really nice to have a bit more clarity. And of course, like I was going to therapy every week during that. Like I had, an expert opinion, but I think all of that work, and I'm a person that like isn't quite everything happens for a reason, but I'm also really grateful for the path that brought me here now. Cause I'm, stoked and thrilled. Actually was on a drive back, from the Janae Eco concert with Manta. And we were talking about something and she goes, how do you like move through that? Like, how do you forgive this person, or how do you like just accept this person in your life? Like if a lot of other people would have cut them off. And it's just like, I don't, with this relationship in general, like I value having it in my life more than I think the unintentional harm caused. And I think I've learned so much from it that I'm okay with it being around. However, I would never accept this from somebody else. So I have to ensure that like I'm unlearning. And there's moments where I see this person doing things that I used to do. And I'm like, God, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore.
For sure.
And I have compassion. The fact that I have compassion for this person now allows me to have compassion for my former self. And so it's kind of this exercise in growth. However, that's not moving forward. Like they made a cut. They're a different draft year. Like they got in before these things happened. I love sports analogies when they don't fit. But I think learning that like to remove urgency from dating was really helpful. Because I had a request from my partners that like before we leave this, we know when we're going to see each other next. And that's like a fair ask, but it was rooted in anxiety, not.
Yeah. I was like anxious attachment. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, please. I could write a book on it. Also, it's a book that's based on like non-monogamy and polyamory, but one of my favorite books for understanding attachment theory in adult relationships is the first 2/3 of Polysecure by Jessica Fern. So the first third of the book talks about attachment styles and kind of breaks down what they are. And the second one, the second third talks about how that shows up in adult relationships. And the last third talks about like how it can manifest and happen and the dynamics in non-monogamous relationships. So for the majority of the population, the first 2/3 are gold mine. And if you
Right.
want to get to the last third, fine. But so much value. That book was where I learned that my anxious attachment style, I wasn't actually attuned to the people that I was trying to attach to. I was just preoccupied with what I thought they wanted, and I wasn't actually cued. That doesn't mean that you're cued into what they actually want. I tend to date people that have at least done a lot of therapy, because then we can talk about like our preferences, what we want, what we like, what things mean to us. And I'll do like the 90-day check-in of like, hey, I do 90-day check-in with people when I'm dating. And I had somebody say, we have more feelings to talk about. I'm like, yes. But I think that's where I really started to learn that communication that you were complimenting. So having to express to people what you're looking for, what you want, because in quote unquote like casual dating and situationships, the whole thing is to be perceived as not liking the other person very much, and to not talk about what you want or any sort of commitment.
Yeah.
Versus like a really great partner to me is like at the 90-day check-in, what I usually tell people is I can't be seeing you for more than 3 months and not call you when I have car trouble. Like if I have car trouble and like maybe a little bit of emotional distress, like you're not going to be the first person I call if I'm in emotional distress, but you might be fifth or sixth. Like, but why are we making time for each other every week if there's not some sort of kind of like mutual safety net?
Yeah, that's so true.
I am a person that really values honesty. Like if I say that like my most, I like, okay, this is, I'll say things like non-sexual fantasies or like my non-sexual kink.
Okay.
So my non-sexual kink is being like a trusted confidant or being a person that somebody goes to like process and think with. That's a thing that makes me feel really valued. If I'm seeing somebody and they're hiding things from me, that feels way worse than just knowing what's going on. Because of my insecurities and like all of those things, my imagination is way worse than what they're actually doing.
Oh, for sure. I can spiral out about anything.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, super good at spiraling. That is one of my hidden skills.
Well, I so appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story. And like I said, like internally, I'm taking notes the whole time. I know as I'm editing this, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what she said. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom and your knowledge. So where can people find you if they don't already follow you?
You can find me for personal and gossip and memes at Erin Noor, ERINNORR. And if you want to talk website branding or how to look great online, or subscribe to my newsletter for the tea every week, that's rubyworks.co. So RUBYWRKS.co on Instagram. And that's my internet URL.
Perfect. Well, just so you know, I officially subscribed to your newsletter. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for tomorrow morning or whenever you upload it. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to be on.
Yeah, cool. Well, everyone out there, until next time, stay brilliant.